Grow CFO is where finance leaders grow together. Join thousands of like-minded professionals using Grow CFO to access the combined knowledge and experience of the finance leader community. You can join us today, growcfo.net. Hello and welcome to the Grow CFO show. I'm your host, Kevin Appleby, and I'm excited about today's guests. I've got Siqi Chen with me, who is founder and CEO, CFO of Runway. Sounds like you do all the jobs there, Siqi.
Yeah, that's all a company does. Thanks for having me. It's great to be on here, Kevin.
Brilliant. Siqi, tell us something about you.
Well, I have two kids, two girls, 10 and 5. And I've been a founder all my life. I love building software. I love building great products. And I love working with really smart people, trying to build something very magical for people. And that's what I've been doing all my entire career. And Runway's no different. And my background's in math. That's what I studied in college. I worked briefly for NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory doing machine vision. And then since then, I've been starting companies of different kinds. And this is my first B2B company of any kind and my first time building finance software. So it's been a very interesting and fun journey.
I've got to be careful here because I am talking to a rocket scientist.
You know, it's funny. They sell these shirts in the JPL campus and it goes, why, yes, actually, I am a rocket scientist. It's so good.
So this is your first venture into finance. So Siqi, why did you found Runway?
Yeah, so this is the fourth time I've been CEO, third time I've been a founder. But when the first time I ran a company was maybe I was a year out of college. And if you're a year out of college, you have no business running anything. But I had a Harvard MBA in my team and I would be getting these spreadsheets every month for the business. We had 40 people and we were growing and I couldn't make heads or tails of what any of it meant on that spreadsheet. And so that feeling of not being conversant in business or finance never really left me. So Zynga bought my first company and I ran product there and we did a lot of modeling. So I got very, very familiar with the process of creating good forecasts. But that was for more product metrics. I never really connected to finance. And then I started another company, which Postmates bought, and I was VP of product growth there. And I remember being in a meeting one time and someone said contribution margin. And I'm like, what's that? And someone told me, actually, that's literally one metrics your team is responsible for. I said, great. Super. And this all came to a head when I was appointed CEO of a company called Sandbox VR shortly before COVID hit. We were in the middle of raising a B, and then COVID hit, and the world shut down, and we were a retail business. We actually have, I think, a number of locations in London now. And of course, we had to figure out what we're going to do. Are we going to, lay off most of the company? What happens if COVID is going to last 6 months, 12 months, 2 years? No one knew how long it was going to last. Long story short, we had to lay off 95% of the company. I laid off the entire executive team, including myself. The founder, Steve, hibernated for the next 2 years, and now it's roaring back. But what that directly led is to this conversation I had with our CFO 30 minutes after I did the layoffs. We were both out of jobs. And I asked him, hey, there was something better we could have used than trading these Google Sheets back and forth, right? Like Figma's a thing, Notion's a thing. We have great software for every function today. Surely there's something great that someone has made for finance that we just didn't bother using. And to my surprise, this is like the best we could do. And I remember had the 40 different versions of the spreadsheet, the errors that we found and how like we would change in one, it wouldn't automatically sync to the other 39. So I talked to the Andreessen team who funded Sandbox VR and I asked them, hey, what if someone made like something as good as Figma or Airtable or Notion, but for the finance function? And they said, yeah, actually, we've been looking for someone to build something in this space. The problem is we couldn't find any product people. And my entire background is in consumer products. And we think that in order for there to be a really disruptive entrance in this space, it can't just be a finance person. It has to be a product person who understands the problem and has felt the pain. And for some reason wants to work on finance software. And then it turns out to be a very small Venn diagram of people. And I raised my hand and said, let's go. That's exactly what I want to do. I think it'll be really fun. And that's how this got started.
Brilliant. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. But that's it. We finance people, we love our spreadsheets. We love our Excel sheets, our Google sheets, whatever they are. Yeah. That's our natural go-to to numbers together. And they're great if you understand the thing, but they're not great tools for presenting the information to somebody else. Yeah.
That's
And
exactly right.
I've also been there and had that nasty incident where there was a formula wrong inside one of these massive spreadsheets. And it ended up giving completely the wrong information to the rest of the business, which led to some bad business decisions. No, it easily happens. So I see the market very definitely. So describe to me a little bit more then what Runway actually does.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to see it. So we have a demo video on our website, but one way to think about the problem that we solve is over something like a spreadsheet. It's like, first of all, I deeply believe that Excel is one of the best pieces of software. It's probably the single best piece of software humans have ever made.
Yeah,
It's like incredibly powerful, incredibly flexible. You can do anything with it.
but I'd argue that Excel is like a Swiss Army knife. There's
Yes.
a tool there to do absolutely everything, but for each of those tools, there's usually a better one.
Yes, that is correct. And I think in particular, what it's not designed to do, because it wasn't designed to do in the first place, is making this understandable to the other people that you work with, right? So if you have a software background, right, you can write software that's understandable to you. Yeah, you can write assembly language. But if you have to collaborate with other people, you have to use higher order programming languages that's more intelligible, more maintainable. And Excel is kind of like that. So let me give you one example, right? One of the big things that CFOs are called to do is to be more strategic, be more collaborative, so that they understand other parts of the business in a deeper way, and other people can understand the role of finance and how the finance and the CEO thinks of their business. And one of the ways you could do that, that would make sense to do, is you have this model that you put together about how you as a CFO think about your business. And you want to share this model with the rest of the team. Because as difficult as it is to understand, at least like if people have access to the model, maybe some of them will understand it. You don't share it. And people think, well, I don't share it because there's really sensitive data there. And actually, that's not completely true. And here's why. The way Excel and Google Sheets works is that all calculations are technically done on the front end, meaning that there is no way for you to physically hide, encrypt a single column called salaries. It's all or nothing
Yeah.
because calculations are done that way. And so if you were a progressive CFO and you wanted everyone to see the model, you actually cannot do that. But because I come from a consumer background, back in 2004 when Facebook got started, they famously observed that the more control they gave users over privacy and who got to see what, the more people were willing to share. Right. And so in Runway, for example, you have extremely fine grained control on permissions, not just on a sheet level or a row or a file level, but on a single column level. And calculations are done on a back end. So you can actually encrypt a single row called salaries and say, I want everyone to understand everything about a business. I just don't want people to see salaries. And that's actually possible to do in Runway. And so that's like one small example where the tools need to be purpose built for the problem, and our behavior is very much informed by the capabilities of tools. Another reason why when we talk to CFOs, they don't want to share access to the spreadsheet is someone might fat finger it, right? Someone might accidentally change a cell and you don't even know about it, and now your lockdown plan, or might be an error you don't know about. And we take a page from GitHub where there are branches, and any change that anyone makes is automatically on the personal branch. And they will have to go through a pull request approval flow for it to get merged back to the main branch. You can see exactly what's changed. And so these details make it a different tool because we solve a different problem.
Yeah. Bad experience of that very problem of giving a spreadsheet out to somebody else to collect information in this case. Back in my days as a business accountant, we had manufacturing plants in the UK and in the Netherlands. Sent a spreadsheet across the Netherlands to get their budget input, which was
Yeah.
an identical sheet to the one that I sent to the plant accountant in the UK. Got the two back. Plant accountant in the UK had filled the sheet in. Plant accountant in the Netherlands had changed the sheet. So the button that I'd designed that said consolidate didn't work anymore.
Yeah. That is a very common problem, right? And sometimes these sheets are sent over Slack, over email, and then you have to ping people to like, please remember to fill out your sheet. And to everyone on the receiving side, it's just paperwork.
Yeah.
But like the reality is, and this is like one of the bigger problems that we solve, is the reality is that every department actually has their own model. And it usually lives on a spreadsheet. It starts with this toy model, it grows to this larger model. And like the marketing department, the product department, the growth department, they all have their own models, sales, and none of that's connected to the main finance model. And the main finance model usually either lives on a spreadsheet or you buy a very expensive FP&A platform and it lives there. But the problem is, even when you buy these very expensive FP&A platforms, the real reality, the real logic of the business still lives in these spreadsheets are very fragmented. And so that is probably one of the most important problems that we solve. So when we think about why that is the case for finance and the running of a business, what these products do that exist is a reason why people adopt them over Excel is not because actually people don't like Excel. People love Excel. But what inevitably happens as a company scales is that the time it takes to actualize your model every month increases, right? You have more data across more data sources. You have people just like ETLing your data and transforming it and updating it every month. And so you can automate that, which a lot of products do solve, and we do too. We integrate with absolutely everything. But the second problem that happens is you have so many people in your company. Now you have to get information from 12 different departments and consolidate it. And then you get the aligned report back, right, to them. And so communication is another problem that these tools solve. And a third one is sheer dimensional complexity. So you have one product line and one geography, one department when you start. But as you grow, all of a sudden you have like a million countries, right? And you have multiple currencies, you have multiple SKUs. And Excel isn't designed to manage these dimensional type of models. And so the convergence of these three problems eventually motivates you to search for something. But these products that solve for that, what they don't do is what happens when the next department head or the next person who makes this into your business has an idea for how the business ought to be. They are not going to go to this tool that you bought that assumes your model is fixed, your business is fixed, and try to like experiment there. They're going to open up Excel because it's within reach, it's easy, it's fast to prototype. And that idea becomes a toy model, then becomes a real model. And that's how you end up with these 40 different spreadsheets. And so what we realize is that the thing that you actually have to choose to build is a better tool for business thinking than Excel. And what has been built so far is a better tool for business finance automation, a better tool for finance communication in the form of workflow management, but it is just not designed to be a better tool for thinking. The speed, the clarity that's required it requires a much higher level of engineering and design, but that's what we've chosen to do at Runway.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about that, a tool for thinking. So how does that work?
Yeah, so the way we think about this is workflows and its abstractions, and this is where ambient intelligence comes in as well. How does a tool for thought work? This is going to go on a tangent, but we're fairly philosophical about this belief. The story of tools for thinking is, I think, really the story of human technology. So one of the very first forms of human technology is actually speech. And what this technology allowed us to do is allowed us to coordinate groups of people within earshot. And speech has allowed the formation of tribes. Yeah. So now I can offload the intent from my mind, transform it into words that other people can understand, and now we can cooperate. And that technology improved. And that technology became writing. And writing allowed us to coordinate people through vast spans of time and distance. And that allowed the creation of civilizations and countries, right? And as technology improved, then we had things like the telegram and more modern email. Now you can like very, very quickly coordinate across vast distances and manage complexity. And when I think about Excel, I actually think it's also a very interesting form of communication technology. What these technologies do is they allow us to offload intent into an external medium to coordinate other groups of people. And what Excel does is allows us to offload business complexity through relationships into this medium. And it allows us to forecast and do these computations that we can't actually handle all in our heads. So we can manage more complexity than we can with our human brain alone. And so we've built technology, it's better abstractions, and people are working together.
let's run some numbers, put our assumptions down, and build a simple spreadsheet to start off with. It becomes more and more complex. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the reason why I go down that little story is a tool for thought. A whiteboard is a tool for thought. Speech and writing, a notepad are all tools for thinking. What they allow us to do, and this is from there's a book called The External Mind, and it describes this concept of offloading. And what offloading is that we have these concepts that we hold in our head. And most people associate intelligence with how much we can hold in our head and how much we can process in our head, right? Magnus Carlsen is intelligent because he can think 30 moves ahead. But you think about how the most important technological advancements has been created, it's actually through people cooperating outside of their head, through whiteboards, through computers, through spreadsheets. And so what these tools for thinking do in the abstract is that it allows us to offload that intent into an external medium, and it represents some version of what's in our heads. And now we can work with other people to hold more context and work together and use our collective brains to like make better decisions. And so spreadsheets do that. And one of the superpowers is you can have more complexity and you can do calculations way faster. And that is a great tool for thought. And I think the way to improve that tool for thought is to build even better abstractions. So for example, the abstraction in a spreadsheet is a cell, and you have cell references. And we could construct rows out of these cells, right? So let's say you have a row called conversion rate, right? To a customer, to an active user, whatever. And this conversion rate is a percentage over time, right? So you have your assumption there. And maybe your formula is next month's conversion rate is going to be the same as last month. Just like make it flat, right? And Excel's great at doing that. So now you say, okay, I think we're going to make the product better. We're going to release some features to improve this conversion rate. And so in next 3 months from now, I'm going to raise the conversion rate from 25% to 35%. So you go to your spreadsheet and you change 25 to 35, right? So on your spreadsheet, what you see is 25, 25, 25, 35, 35, 35. But what that discontinuity represents is there are engineers that you hired who work with product managers who are going to put something on the roadmap to move that number. And it's for a certain product. And you're going to build a certain feature for that number to change. And that context lives in product roadmaps. It lives in Notion, lives in other places. None of that is in your assumption in your model. It's just all you see is 25 to 35.
Yeah.
So if you can identify these discontinuities and you can create new abstraction, you can say like, whenever there's a change in this number, actually there's something that happened here. And I'm going to associate that with a roadmap item or a feature or a strategic plan. And if you can isolate that change, now you can say, all right, cool. Instead of like, so you think about if you just have the 25 to 35 and now you say, all right, I think this feature is going to be delayed for 3 months, right? So I'm going to change this 35 back to 25. I'm going to go 3 cells over and change the 25 to 35 instead. And you change the timing of these things, right? If you have an abstraction for this, you can just like move that feature that happened and you can just drag it.
Yeah.
3 months later. Right. And so we build these new abstractions that enable these kind of interactions that lets you handle more complexity and create more clarity and connect it to other forms of context like your roadmap and your project and your tasks. And that's what you can do when you rethink the fundamentals of what the primitives are.
Yeah. So am I right in thinking that if I've got a planning system somewhere that's physically got the tasks in that we're going to do and the plan shifts, then if I've put this together properly, it's reflected straight back in all my numbers.
Yeah. Would it be helpful if I just like share my screen for a second?
Absolutely. We will have a video version of this podcast.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's actually super great. So yeah, I mean, this is all like really hard to imagine in your head, which is why these tools exist. So you don't have to imagine it, right? But I'll just give you a really simple example. So this is kind of a toy model, right? This is a 12 sales and marketing model. And in Runway, you have these human readable formulas. That's one of the great things where if you have a row as an abstraction, instead of like having index matches or having like A1 divided by B2, you can just say, this formula is marketing spend last month times 1 plus our marketing growth rate.
Yeah.
Right. And so every formula works like this. But you'll notice we have something like marketing spend here, and we have a qualified lead conversion rate. and we have a cost per lead. And you'll notice these numbers are changing, but what's missing is why is it changing? Who's going to change them? And when you have your model in Runway, you can integrate your plans here. So you'll notice you have this small marketing plan, and it impacts marketing spend and qualified leads and cost per lead. So this fall marketing campaign is going to increase marketing spend by $10K a month over the course of 3 months. And then in January, we're going to refresh our ad targeting. And that's the thing that lifts the qualified lead conversion rate by 12%. In February, new ad creatives from our agency, and they all have different owners, is going to reduce our cost per lead by $160. That's why it's happening. And so if you have plans, it gives you context over why the numbers are changing, who's changing them, instead of just the raw numbers. And what it allows you to do is not only understand the fact that these are plans exist, you can also understand, what do the plans do? So a question you might ask fairly frequently, if I do this fall marketing campaign, how does it affect my cash, my burn, my runway, ARR? And what you would traditionally have to do is you have to make a copy of the spreadsheet, right? Undo the changes, and compare by hand the before and after. In Runway, if you want to understand the impact of any part of your plan, you just click on it. Yeah. And this blue highlighted area is immediately the impact of the thing you selected. Yeah. Right? So the fall marketing campaign reduces runway, increases ARR. New ad creatives has a smaller impact. Or you can click this entire marketing plan as a whole, and you can see how all these decisions actually multiply upon each other with much bigger impact. And the next thing you can do is, well, what happens if you spend more on marketing, less on marketing? And of course, you could just move this up, and in real time, we're going to just show you the impact of it. You're automatically in a draft, so we show you the before and after. And what's most powerful is, imagine having to be in the board meeting with this spreadsheet, and the board says, okay, this is a great plan, Siqi. What happens if we push back this marketing plan by 3 months, right? And again, you have to find the delta here, apply the deltas over here, paste the old formulas back, and do it for every single other row that was impacted by the timing of your plan.
There's multiple changes in your Excel spreadsheet.
Exactly. And so changing the timing of it is far worse than changing the magnitude of a decision in a traditional spreadsheet. But in Runway, you could just be in that board meeting, and they could be looking at this plan, and if that question comes up, you can say, let's see what happens, and you're done.
You move the gun. Yeah.
You just move it. And so that's a brief illustration of what happens when you have different primitives, different abstractions that map closer to how a person thinks about their business. People fundamentally do not think about their business purely in the form of a wall of numbers. They think about it in terms of roadmaps and projects and plans, and we can now integrate the two for the first time, which hasn't really happened before. So this is what I mean by a better tool for thinking.
Absolutely. Is this also something that allows you to put pretty much real-time dashboards together?
Yeah. So everything that I just showed you actually can be connected to real-time sources of data. So this is a sample environment, but in our own environment, we have people integrating Jira, because now you can integrate, figure out what the impact is of a single ticket. We have people integrating Google Sheets, data warehouses, HR systems. So we have so many integrations. We actually have a search engine for them. We now support 750 different things from accounting, analytics, billing, data warehouses, HR systems, spreadsheets, you name it, we probably support it. And the whole idea is you have your model, and the reason why we said so in Runway, and then you want to connect that model to everything that happens in your company. And one of the big things that we believe at Runway is that finance is actually not about finance. It really, everything that happens in a company is finance.
Yes.
Right? It's every person, every project, every department. And I think fundamentally, the finance software we have today is not built with that assumption in mind. The work that is being done in Jira and in project management software and in the marketing team through ad networks, all of that is finance. But traditionally, finance is mostly about expenses and revenue, and it's less about the operational drivers and things that lead to that. Yeah. And we want to change that.
Yeah. And that's really interesting. And a lot of my background, if I go back to my consulting life, was in putting together balanced scorecards, KPI dashboards, things like that. And you drive backwards from the strategic objectives of the business. And you'd say, well, what are the business drivers that lead to those objectives? What do you need more of? What do you need less of? And you'd build up something that looked rather like a mind map going backwards from the strategic objective.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
all of these variables that you were more of or less of. And
Totally.
yeah,
I think that is exactly how a good CFO and a good operating team should think in our business in front of these levers. And the best ones, and I think most CFOs are like really good and they know to think about it in this way. The thing that is missing though is that the real picture is actually distributed throughout the organization.
yeah,
Like that the real drivers are in the heads of, for the sales department, is in the head of the sales department, the head of sales. The drivers for product is the head of engineering and head of product. And they do have their own models that do represent these drivers most of the time. And it's just that there's like that people don't have visibility to it because what we're limited to is we have these finance platforms and the main job is to get budgets.
yes.
And like budgets do not represent the drivers of how the business works. They just like it. That's why it feels like paperwork. It just feels like, well, okay, fine. You want a number? I'll give you a number. I don't really care about it. You've been bugging me on Slack for the past week. I've been procrastinating because I don't see the value of it. But fine, I'll give you your stupid spreadsheet back. Right? Because they have this real model and they know that all these drivers aren't incorporated in this finance platform. And so that's the thing that you have to get to. And our fundamental belief is that you cannot get there by building just a workflow tool and an automation tool. It has to be a tool that people actively reach for. It's so good and flexible that you want to do your thinking here because it's faster, because all your data is there.
Okay, so Siqi, we've got an issue emerging here that we're starting from the point of view that this is a finance tool. We're now reaching out and saying, actually, this is where the whole business should do its thinking. So how about the change process? That's a vast, vast cultural change.
Yeah.
You can have the most fantastic tool in the world that enables all of it.
Yeah.
What's the process to actually get people to use it?
Yeah. I think change management is such a interesting branding, right? Like if I think about why change management exists, it exists because in what context does this term even exist? It exists in the world of enterprise software.
Yeah.
And what we know about enterprise software is that is not software that anybody will actually choose to use.
Yeah, quite. Yes.
Right? And because you don't have to build software that you'll choose to use. The user, the buyer is not the decision maker usually, and you just have to use the thing that was bought. So you have to have a process of change management because the thing that you bought is not anything that anyone wants to use. But when you think about what does get used, what is a change management process for Notion or for Excel? Why is there no change management process for that? The reason why is because the products are so good, people actually do want to use it.
Yeah.
So I would say like our change management process is by building a good product that people actually want to use, right? Like people will choose these tools and these tools have a lot of impact on the people's behavior and culture. Like I was one of the first investors in a company called Amplitude, which is product analytics software. But if you rewind 20 years ago when I was head of product at Zynga, the way you got data, the standard operating procedure in most companies is the data warehouse is locked down. You have a data analyst team and you send an email to them asking for some kind of like poll and create some kind of report. And a few hours later, a few days later, you get a report back. And that's how analytics was done.
Yeah.
But when things like Amplitude and Mixpanel came out, it allowed anyone outside of the data team to self-service, to get answers themselves. And it's fundamentally changed both the strategic value of data, but it also changed the cultural norms around data. You work for a tech company now, and no matter what your role is, you kind of take for granted that you are allowed to know what the user count, what the growth is, what retention is, what conversion rate is. That was not always the case, and it's because tools enable that behavior change. In the design space, there's Figma, right? And people forget that Figma is a great design tool, but before it existed, it was culturally considered rude to even look over the shoulder of your designer as they're working. But what Figma did is now everyone's in design in this tool, whether you're a PM or an engineer or a business person, and we just take for granted that's okay. That was not always the case. It took a better collaborative tool for the norms to change. And I think the same is true for finance. There is no equivalent product for Figma or Amplitude in the finance space.
Mm. Yeah. So, okay, we've got a tool that people will want to use. So the change thing isn't necessarily a big issue, but I want to put together my financial model.
Yeah.
I need my financial model then to work from the plans of all of these other people.
Yeah.
Surely then that's going to start restricting the way some people work because it's got to be kind of in a format that can be integrated.
I think that is true. I guess I would understand better what you mean by restricting.
Well, okay, I've got a financial model. It's got a sales forecast in it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I've therefore to drive that sales forecast, I've got to have some assumptions. Those assumptions are the things that are coming out of other people's models.
Sure.
Now, they've got to be modeling the right things in their models to feed my assumptions.
Yeah, that is true. And I guess like what I'm not hearing is like that there's nothing about that sounds bad to me.
No.
In the sense that like if you're working with your sales leader, would you not want them to model their business in a way where they understand all of the drivers and assumptions and now you're aware of them and you can see them? And with that visibility, if there is misalignment between you and a sales leader in different departments or the CEO, now you can have a conversation about it to come to alignment on what those assumptions should be. So what I'm hearing is like, that sounds like a future to me.
Sounds a brilliant future. Yeah, I'm just thinking, I'm the sort of person that's normally dropped into the delivery project of a big system like this. How on earth do I get people to do what I need them to do it in the time that I want them to do it in the style that I want them to do it in, so it all hangs together, knowing fine well that if you leave a committee to design a horse, you get a camel.
Oh, totally. I mean, so we do not require anyone to use Runway, and we don't really necessarily encourage. You could, right? You could have put a change around and say, okay, all of your models have to live on Runway. But to start, the way we solve problems for a finance team from the get-go is, look, you're spending a ton of time pulling data and shaping your data to actualize your model. We can automate that. We're going to save you a bunch of time that way. And you have version control issues, so you don't have to maintain 40 different versions of your spreadsheet anymore. You can have scenarios on Runway, and they branch, they stay in sync as you make changes to the main model. And the third thing is you have a very complex model and there's going to be errors in some cell. We have a very simplified and fully flexible dimensional modeling experience where now it's a lot more maintainable. And so these are the problems that we solve, even if no one else outside of the finance department uses them.
Yeah.
And if you have that, you are no worse off than before in terms of like how you get information from the other departments. And what we've seen is that once you have this tool, the CEO and the other departments look at this like, oh, this looks like Notion. And this has all of our data sources and I can connect it. And I can like stand up a toy model pretty quickly. And so why not just do it here? And so we have people who are running growth teams, engineering teams, sales teams who would rather use Runway to start forecasting. And this is what happens when you have a tool that people actually want to use. And once it's there, then it's easy to connect it if you want. But if they don't do it, you're no worse off than you are before.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. So tell me more about how AI fits into this.
Yeah. So the way we think about AI is there's two major product expressions that you've seen in the world with AI. So one big branch of AI is basically to treat AI as a creature external to you.
Yeah.
So when you think about what ChatGPT is, you're literally having a conversation with this other entity, right? You hear a lot about agents, and agents are basically full-on independent entities that are going to do things for you. And I think that's interesting. And I think the technology and the models are going to get better for that to be more reliable. But by and large, outside of ChatGPT, I think those are like the less interesting expressions of AI. And the problem with that expression is that most users don't know what AI can't or can't do. So they don't know what to ask it to do. So they either try to make it do things that are impossible that it can do, like create a scenario for me in a spreadsheet. Like LLMs aren't good at that, at writing the spreadsheets. or they ask it to not to do things that is really good at, like help them brainstorm something, help them understand something. And the other problem with these expressions is that they don't know a whole lot about you. They don't have a lot of business context. They don't have context about why these plans, what the story of you and the business is. And without that context that's very personal to you, it's very hard to be helpful. You can be the smartest person in the world, but if you don't know much about the business or this person you talk to, you're not going to be able to do a lot.
Right.
And so the two biggest opportunities is one, proactiveness. Like, how do you make a product that uses AI that does stuff without you having to ask it to do things? And two, it knows something about you. So when we look at what is the most economically productive expressions of AI today, it's actually not a chat interface that everyone straps on their product and calls it AI. It's something like, for a software engineer, it would be something like a GitHub Copilot or Cursor. And that actually is very, very different than a preacher. What these products do is you're doing work and it accelerates that work as you're doing it. So an engineer is writing code and it autocompletes. It says like, okay, I think this is what you're trying to do, and I'm going to help you autocomplete. And I think these expressions of AI that accelerate your work, that understands your intent, that helps you think, doesn't think for you, but makes your thinking faster and more clear. That is what we internally call ambient intelligence. Yeah. It's intelligence that's there. It's not in your face. It's not a weird sparkling emoji. One of our beliefs is that we don't nobody advertises software as like powered by Amazon Web Services or powered by JavaScript, right? And like the fact that people advertise powered by AI just sounds as ridiculous as that. You should use AI everywhere. It should be in every pixel, but it shouldn't be this weird thing that you kind of like talk to as an external creature. So I'll give you a really simple example of one expression of AI in Runway. You write your model and you write a row or formula. When you open up and view the details of any row that you have, there is a plain English explanation of how that formula works and how it's calculated. And it just looks like text. And you wouldn't even know if it was AI if we didn't tell you. That's because it's just in the background. And when you need it, it's there. Or if you're looking at a BVA, we just tell you, oh, looks like there's 19% variance. And we did the drilling for you. And most of the variance came from an unexpected variance in G&A software expenses, right? So these are the things that AI can do. You're not asking a question. You're just working and it just tells you things, making things more understandable and faster.
I really, really like that use of AI. And one thing that I really haven't got away with yet is using, say, Copilot in Excel. Great if you're trying to think about what formula do I need to do this particular task. But in terms of helping you document the spreadsheet in plain English, the way you're saying, so that it's not sell A1 times B2, it's sale last month times by growth percentage to give you sales next month, which makes sense in English. That kind of AI that's doing that sort of documentation is really, really useful.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to give you an example, right? Like, where's the AI here? Well, the AI, actually, did we remove it? Oh, yeah. So here it is. This driver measures financial runway. Historical data is calculated by dividing available cash rate and burn rate. This is all like done completely automatically, right? Yeah. And so like we really don't do a whole lot of advertising around like, oh, this is like AI powered. I mean, we do have like some fancy AI features, like, you know, if you must, like we do have the Copilot, but we don't put it like in your face or front and center. If you want it, it's there. So you could do things like, hey, Runway, can you figure out a plan for us to triple revenue? And like people are familiar with it, so we do have it, but that's not actually the primary expression of how we use AI here. Once you have this, like, okay, so it does do that, but we let you fine tune it. So you could say, so this means by the end of 2025, we expect to have, and what's cool is this is not AI at all. You can just reference anything in your model as text. So you can say, what is the value of ARR in December 25? And what's our total headcount? Right? And the cool thing here is all of these are going to stay in sync as you move your plans around. So you push your marketing plan back, guess what? Your ARR is going to go down. And so we're ultimately like, people ask, I talked to a lot of investors, they ask like, what is the secret sauce supposed to moat? And people are actually really I'm really reluctant to say this because every people want to hear is that the mode is like magical AI, whatever, and we have that. But the real mode for Runway is design. And design is just deeply undervalued in general, especially enterprise software, but in general.
Yeah, yeah. Great design makes things nice to use. And it's no surprise Apple's the world's most valuable company.
That's right. That's right. But somehow it feels like, oh, it's not a real mode. It doesn't feel as strong of a mode. But great design is actually very difficult and very rare, which is why it's still undervalued.
Siqi, as we kind of draw this session to a close, we've managed, certainly for me for the first time, I'm looking at the participants panel as we record this podcast in Zoom. And I'm seeing more AI assistants in the room than there are people. There's two of us. There's my note taker, there's your note taker, and then there's something else called Runway Assistant. What that Runway Assistant is.
So one of the fun things about Runway is we don't like talk about AI that much, but we sure use it a whole lot internally. So I was part of the Zapier keynote a few months back, and they did a deep dive on some of the things that our team built. So when our website went viral last year, we were getting so many leads that we couldn't qualify them fast enough. We were a very small team back then. And so we built this AI agent that would take each email, enrich it with other sources of data. We would then write a prompt, and it just said, like, this is roughly what our ICP looks like. Finance teams in a mid-market, 50 to 1,000 or so employees, and it's able to qualify them. And if that's qualified, then we say, please write an email in a very cheeky way that cleverly references what they do on their website with what Runway is about, and create a clever draft, make it not obsequious, make it very clever, and then put that draft in drafts of the Gmail folder of our account executives. So instead of like having a person do all this, we get, we're getting like multiple sentences a minute. And we, in the morning when our sales rep wake up, it would just be pre-qualified, pre-drafted emails waiting in our draft folder. And so our team has built a variety of tools like this, whether it's for sales or for CX, where we were able to figure out, okay, what are problems, or even for interviews, actually, for candidate interviews, we have a standard format and we put in GPT. We could automatically parse out the highs and lows. We don't make hiring decisions off of that, but we really try to automate it as much as we can. I often tell the team, it is my dream for Runway to never be more than 100 people, because I think we are started at a time where it is now possible to scale with increasing AI leverage instead of just adding headcount.
Yeah. So, for the first time, a podcast recorded where there were more bots in the room than people. That's fantastic. So,
yeah,
I'm sure we could go on chatting about this for hours, because I find things like this absolutely fascinating, but I'm conscious that we've run out of time. So, thank you hugely for being this week's guest on the Grow CFO Show.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed this immensely.